Welcome to the Honest Mamas podcast, where we talk about the emotional and spiritual aspects of the motherhood journey. We are a team of honest mamas. Myself, Melissa, Sophie, and Claire. We are psychotherapists, moms, and friends. Join us as we get real about the topics that matter to you. I am so privileged to chat today with Dr. Kat, a psychologist and creator of Mom and Mind, a website and podcast devoted to maternal mental health. Today we talk about postpartum depression and anxiety. Many women struggle with both. Dr. Kat shares about her own personal journey and also gives us some warning signs that perhaps you too are dealing with postpartum depression and or anxiety. We talk about what are, quote, normal levels of anxiety and sadness after a baby, and some signs too when you should probably seek professional help. Obviously, this is different for everyone, and in no way does this podcast come in place of professional help. If you are struggling with postpartum depression or anxiety, contact a health professional near you. Here is my chat with Dr. Kat. Dr. Kat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Wonderful. Well, today's episode is about postpartum depression and anxiety. And I thought where we could begin, not only that you work with moms in the maternal mental health field, but you also are a mom twice. So, having two children. So I thought we could start with your experience giving birth and how that potentially opened you up to the area of postpartum depression and anxiety.
Sure. Yeah. So I can talk about both births. They were very different. The first one with my daughter, who's now 7, everything was fine in pregnancy. Thankfully, I didn't have any medical issues, and neither did she. So we were pretty healthy. And thanks to my hormone structure, pregnancy was like a break for me hormonally.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, right. I've had a pretty rough PMS. So whatever hormonal things happened during pregnancy, it freed me of that kind of up and down that my PMS was giving me. So that was nice. In terms of, I had a doula, and I was preparing in as much of a holistic sort of a way that I could, really wanting to have a grounded birth experience. And my choice for birth was to try to have a non-medicated birth and to deliver vaginally. And that was the goal. And primarily, I was mostly able to do that. However, labor took a very long time, very, very, very long time. My first contraction was Friday night, and I had my daughter Monday midday.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had back labor, so she was
goodness.
was turned around. Yeah, and I did a lot with the birth plan that I had. I had a lot of stuff in place, so we did a lot of my initial laboring kind of on Saturday. I never got the really consistent stuff on Saturday in terms of contractions, but my plan was, this sounds so idealistic, but somehow it worked. I baked cookies all day I
love that.
So I could stand up and sort of be active. I was making cookies for the nurses and the doctors at the hospital.
Yep.
So that kept me really busy. I made, I don't know how many dozen cookies, but it was a lot. So that was all day Saturday up and just going through contractions. And it got to a point where Sunday morning, I had been in contact with my doula the whole time, but Sunday morning, I was, feeling some pressure, what I now know to be that pressure of birth. But it was, I don't know what pressure I was feeling because she did not come. Anyhow, we went to the hospital, and the labor was excruciating. There were the contractions. They were long and The only way I can describe it is kind of long and deep.
Mm-hmm.
And my doula was there, thankfully. She stayed up with me for I don't know how many hours, and so did my husband, and they were in there. So I was able to start actively pushing in the morning, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think around 8, 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and I pushed for about 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that really, got me distracted was thankfully I had a very clear birth plan, and that was helpful. And I had a doula that was advocating for me, and my husband, who also is during shift change, like the nurses and doctors that I had before were supportive of me going the kind of non-medicated take as long as you need route. And then kind of a newish doctor jumped in on her shift, and she came in kind of without really saying a whole lot to me other than, you've been in labor for a long time, we should consider induction, or I can't even remember what she said. And I just felt like my focus, my concentration, my spirit, it was like someone popped a balloon.
Yeah.
That was really upsetting. But I was thankful because my husband took up the cause very quickly on my behalf.
Fantastic.
And so did my doula. And they went and basically took the doctor into the hallway. And have you seen, what is that movie? Oh, gosh. Oh, never mind. But anyhow, the doctor came back in and she was sort of refocused.
Mm-hmm.
And allowed me to proceed. And I had a nurse that helped me labor through a lot of it. She was very experienced. So that was amazing.
It's just amazing how somebody, and I know we're not talking about birth experiences today, but it is so amazing as you share your birth experience, because I've heard this so many times, and I know for myself, is that who kind of comes out to help you, and then who shows up and like one word or a look, because you're so open, you're so vulnerable, you're picking up on everything around you, and you're so sensitive. So you really got to get your team. And I'm so glad that you had your doula and your husband there to talk to the doctor.
Yeah, I'm a strong supporter of having a doula because they're an advocate also. And I had the same one, that thankfully, for both births. But after my daughter was born, I pretty much right away started feeling anxious. Mm-hmm. And it was, I when she came out, I had that feeling like, oh, it was you in there that whole time. Nice to meet you. And I felt some connection to her, but I didn't feel that like gush of overwhelm, of the gush of love sort of a thing. And I didn't feel too bad about that. Mm-hmm. I think because I was so focused on being worried about her. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense at all.
Makes a lot of sense. It's sort of, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So looking back on it now, I know that the anxiety started on the first day.
Do you remember what you were anxious about, Kat?
My daughter had, I think she had swallowed just a touch of meconium. Mm-hmm. And so she had coughed up a little bit of green stuff, or looked green. And they wrapped her up, as they do, and swaddled her and put her in the little bassinet that could be right next to the bed. It's like a clear thing where you can see right in. And I could see her, and she was there, and she looked fine. But after she coughed, it sort of just woke this, like, I don't know, instinct or something like this. Hypervigilance just kicked right in. Mm-hmm. Where like she's in there, her arms are swaddled, she can't move. It's up to us to figure out what to do. I just met her.
and also you just met her and you're laying in bed in recovery. So yeah.
Right. And for my recovery, I was up for, I don't know, 36 hours, but I couldn't sleep because I still had this kind of adrenaline and now this hypervigilance. Mm-hmm. So I was awake and kind of checking on her, kept looking over, making sure she's okay. And some of that is fine and normal. This new being is there. But I was really starting to worry about her choking. And that was the primary anxiety.
I wonder about that because I know with so many new moms, primarily I think, especially when it's your first, I mean, it can definitely show up with kids down the line and when you have your second, third, whatever. But with your first child, I think there is so much anxiety. I just so relate when you're talking to it. Like, are they breathing? Are they still here? Is their heart beating? Like just so much around the physical of the baby and if they're okay physically.
Yeah.
And also this hypervigilance that I think kind of comes in almost from like a very primal place, like a very primal place. You can't even stop it. Doctors can tell you, she's fine. But like there is something that lives, I think, inside of us moms that is very primal.
Yeah. And I don't think that hypervigilance is entirely bad. I think it's a good kind of natural, normal kind of response. However, it does get bad. If it never subsides or if it doesn't wane after a little while, if you don't start to feel a little more relaxed, I guess, and that's not a judgmental relaxed, just kind of that you can breathe a little bit easier when that anxiety never changes or stays that high for a long time and starts impacting sleep and starts impacting your ability to do other things because you're so vigilant about the baby, that's when it starts to become the complication of anxiety.
I remember also not being able to think straight because of the anxiety.
Right. The way I think of this particular type of anxiety is as if you're looking at everything through a magnifying glass. It looks massive and it looks like it's the most important thing going on, and it seems 100% real and true. And certainly it's not to say there aren't things to be concerned about or to have an awareness about. But when you can't see anything else other than that massive worry right in front of you, that's anxiety.
And it's so hard to know. I mean, I work with so many clients around what is sort of our instinct and our motherly instinct. I mean, we've carried this baby for so long, and there are certain things that I think and I feel as a mother, you just know. And where does that line kind of stop and anxiety begin? I think that is something that is so individual for each of us to try to find that balance. And when you're in it and you're sleep deprived and you've had medication or not, and there are hormones, and perhaps you're breastfeeding, which causes more hormones. I mean, there's so much happening.
It is a whirlwind of just new stuff, and like you said, hormones and sleep deprivation. And I think actually for me, part of the initial issues was sleep deprivation, and it is for most women. But because I went into new motherhood sleep deprived and exhausted, and a lot of us do, and that doesn't mean you will develop a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. However, I just was so tired already and not really thinking all that straight.
And so when you took your little girl home, did you notice the anxiety escalated, stayed the same, or for you, did it sort of dissipate?
It did not dissipate. I remember on the way home on our car ride, I was sitting in the back with her. My husband was driving very slowly, thankfully, and thinking the world is entirely different now. And just having this profound feeling of just shift and change. And the world was different to me. I saw everything differently right away coming out into the life with her, out into the world with her. And it was lovely. It was a beautiful feeling, but it also came with this feeling of intense worry, that how vulnerable she is and how much care she needs. So there was a mixed feeling there. Then when we got home, it was just feeling unsure of myself, feeling like I was supposed to know what to do and I didn't. And how much that really, really messed with my head. A feeling, and then around like day 3 to 6, I call the flood.
So accurate.
Right. Because I just started crying and my boobs were leaking everywhere.
Yes.
And my body was leaking everywhere. I was just sweating everything out.
Yes.
Yeah, that was interesting. But I didn't expect that, and I didn't know that, and it really freaked me out.
And you know what's so hard about that, Kat, is that I feel like that period very much in particular, nobody warns you about, and really should, because I remember waking up drenched. I was wet. It was almost like I had taken a bath and I just didn't know. And I was freaked out. I thought, oh my gosh, am I sick? Like, what's going on? Is there something bad happening?
Scary.
Yes.
It's scary if you don't know that it's normal.
Yes. And the tears too, I think are very overwhelming.
Yeah, and that's the part. I called a friend who had just had a baby like maybe a year or two earlier and had another son too. I'm crying. Like, what is going on? And she said, it's okay. This is normal. And she was the first person to tell me that this was normal.
Wow.
But there was something in me that felt like what I'm feeling is not normal.
Interesting.
Like my level of anxiety that I had, I kind of couldn't fully take in her message, even though, she could explain to me, you're going to cry and all these things are going to happen and that it's okay, which was comforting. But my anxiety just started to ramp after we got home. And it got to, so at that point I was already a therapist, but I wasn't a specialist in perinatal mental health. So it took me about a year almost to figure out exactly what was going on. I was depressed. I was anxious. And the anxiety got to really unbearable levels of just worry and intrusive thoughts. For those who are listening who don't know what intrusive thoughts are, they are like very quick thoughts that kind of come in like lightning, can come out of nowhere. Oftentimes they're confusing or scary, or you think, why would I even think that? Or why would I even do that? Why am I thinking these thoughts? So I had a lot of those and I didn't know what was going on.
And when did you notice some of the postpartum depression?
It's all such a blur.
Right.
I think it came on fairly quickly too. So depression and anxiety often come together in the postpartum specifically, but within the first couple of weeks, I knew I could feel myself and not be myself, but I didn't know what was wrong. Because my assumption was that, okay, this is just what I'm supposed to be feeling like, I guess. And I didn't know how to differentiate between kind of normal new mom stuff and abnormal new mom stuff. And I figured since I was a therapist that I would know, but I didn't.
Yes.
Because I had never been trained and nobody really ever had that discussion with me.
And so now, looking back, being the therapist that you are and with the specialty that you have in maternal mental health, what would you say, just so that for some of the moms listening or the women that are going to give birth that maybe are worried, maybe they have some depression in their history or they have struggled with anxiety before having a child, what are some of the signs, would you say, for postpartum depression and anxiety that they should sort of look for that maybe aren't as normal and maybe should seek help or something like that? What would you say that would be?
Yeah. For anxiety, I think I kind of touched on it maybe for a split second before. And so if you're having thoughts that are popping into your head that are really bothersome for you, you don't understand why you're having them, and they're distressing you. So for instance, if you're holding your baby and all of a sudden you worry if you're going to drop them or if you're going to hurt them somehow. But that's obviously not something you want to do, but those thoughts keep happening and you're unable to just brush them aside or get past them if you kind of keep worrying about them and actually worry that you're going to hurt them. Those kinds of things are more on the anxious level. Everybody has, even new dads, have these intrusive kinds of thoughts. But when they get to the point where you can't get them out of your mind, or you find yourself doing things to cope with those thoughts, like avoiding the stairs so that you don't drop your baby, or going very slowly around corners just in case so you don't accidentally bump their head. Those kinds of things where you're unable to kind of let the thought go. So another sign of anxiety is if when you have time to rest and you know that you're tired, you can't sit down, you clean, you do that 5 million things on your list because everything needs to get done and there's no time for you to take care of yourself. That's the sign, for me, that's a sign of anxiety. When I'm listening to moms, that list is forever long. It's always going to be there. But there's a certain amount of recovery that we also need. And usually oftentimes when a mom is anxious and cannot sit down when she has the time to or needs to, that to me notes that there's something going on.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because then I also think of the moms, like me. So maybe I definitely can resonate with what you just shared about the million list thing after I gave birth. And then sometimes I would force myself. I was a therapist. I knew I had to take a break. I wasn't sleeping at night. And I would lay down and my heart would be sort of racing and I couldn't get comfortable and my thoughts would be racing. And I would try, but it still felt like, the anxiety was so present. It even became even more intolerable. So I would get up and do things, which would make me more tired.
Right. That's a perfect description. That is so hard. It is really hard to fight against that. Yeah. Another sign of anxiety that I see a lot is checking on Google, searching for symptoms, especially at 3:00 in the morning. You're like, looking for how do I feed my baby? How do I help my baby sleep? What does this sound mean? What does that, mark on their skin mean? And we're all searching for answers, but when it gets to the point where, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling worried, you go onto the internet to find an answer. And most of the time you come back out more worried. You find something new to be worried about.
Yes. I would say probably 90% of the time.
Yeah. Yes.
It's pretty high.
Yeah. It's a huge chunk. Yeah. So if you find yourself constantly searching and for answers, that might mean that you're feeling pretty anxious and worried. Yeah, I hear a lot of other stuff around on the more depressive side, just for some moms not feeling connected or bonded, or, maybe they're going through the motions of motherhood and doing the diapers and the feeding, but, don't feel connected, feel like there's some distance between them and their child. And also exhaustion. So this is where it gets difficult, because if you're sleep deprived, you're going to be more anxious and depressed and you're going to feel more tired.
Yes.
But it's kind of this like bone tired, where you just feel heavy and it feels like hard to move and sometimes it's hard to motivate. And just so you're like slogging through the day, waiting for the day to be over.
And in your experience working with clients, when I think about postpartum depression and sort of how it's coming to light a little bit more than it used to be years ago. I definitely think it's more in the field now than it was. When I think of that, I think so much of the fear around that is mothers and suicide. And I just wonder, in your experience in working with a lot of postpartum women, if that is sort of I just think when people think postpartum depression, they may think, well, I'm not going to kill myself, so I might not be experiencing postpartum depression, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. And it can also mean that, correct?
Right. Correct. Yeah. So statistically, the number of people who actually commit suicide is relatively low postpartum, but suicidal ideation is a more severe symptom. So if we're thinking about depression and anxiety, I want to look at it on a spectrum. So you can experience anything from kind of mild symptoms, but it does kind of mess up your day, to more moderate symptoms where you can be feeling them more intensely and more frequently, and more severe symptoms where it's kind of all day, every day, or the things you're experiencing are really, really intense.
And can you touch on quickly those symptoms? You mentioned them briefly just a moment ago, but just for the listeners so that they can really hear if they may have this or not.
Of depression specifically?
Of postpartum depression, yeah.
Yeah, right. So if you're feeling like sad, if somebody asked you if you feel sad or low mood or depressed, if you feel unmotivated to do much, if you have lost interest or pleasure in doing things that you used to, if your concentration and memory are kind of in a spotty place, if you are feeling really badly about yourself, if you're having really negative thoughts, I'm a bad mother, maybe this kid deserves to be with another parent, I'm not doing a good enough job. There's a lot of negative internal talk that happens. And that can happen with anxiety as well. But the negative self-talk can be really profound. And then make you feel worse too. It's like somebody standing in front of you and just berating you the whole time. And we're doing it to ourselves.
Constantly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the more severe symptoms is suicidal thoughts. And what that can look like is, I hear that's also for me, there's a range. Sometimes it is like very specific thoughts of, I don't want to live anymore. I can't do this, so I'm going to do something to take my life. And those would, if you have a plan to hurt yourself, and if you have the means to hurt yourself, then this is an emergency kind of close to an emergency situation. Mm-hmm. What I hear most often from moms is more things like, I just want to get in my car and drive away.
Yes.
I need like 3 weeks by myself.
Yes.
I don't want anyone to talk to me. I don't want anyone to touch me.
Oh my gosh.
Right. All of that.
Yes.
All of that
it's
stuff.
It's so normal.
Mm-hmm.
So much of this, I think, sorry to interrupt you, but much of this is, as a new mom, so much of this is normal. And I think as you're talking, you're speaking about all these ways in which moms can sort of identify, are they struggling with anxiety or postpartum depression? I think this is such helpful information. And I also want to throw in there is that there's so much shame around depression or anxiety because people just assume once you have a baby, this is like the most amazing miracle on the planet. And it is wonderful, but it's also very, very challenging. And so as you're sharing all of this, I just want to say, like, so many of us have been there and it is so normal. We don't talk about it.
Right.
And I think the piece that we start having to, okay, now it's time to reach out to a therapist or get some support or go to my pastor or whoever it is that you can connect with and get support from. That's sort of the line that you so eloquently are kind of drawing in the sand of like, this is when you may need some professional help.
Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of moms feel like, oh, I should be able to figure this out. I should know what I'm doing. And one of my favorite analogies, it's pretty random, but is like, have you seen the movie The Matrix?
Yes.
So like they are able to put this portal thing into their head and download all of the information they need right away and be able to be masters at whatever that thing is. And I think the pressure from motherhood is that way too, that as soon as you get this baby, you're automatically going to somehow magically supposed to know everything you need to know, be really good at it, not ever complain and just, be happy all the time because this is what you wanted. And it's a ridiculous amount of pressure.
And especially with women, I think that have struggled to get pregnant and that have gone through, different ways to do that. I think, there may be also added pressure. Like I worked so hard to get this baby. Now, okay, what is wrong with me?
Right. I'm supposed to be happy. I see that a lot, especially with people who have difficulty with infertility for a while and have had multiple losses and have been trying for years, or even if they, sometimes it doesn't have to be that you've been trying that long. This is what you wanted. So the guilt is just, if I could remove the guilt and the shame, that would help so much.
Yeah.
We're guilty about everything.
Yes. And unfortunately that doesn't, in my experience end with, mom just having new babies. It extends a lot through, when your children get older.
Yeah.
So tell me, exactly. Tell me, what are some best ways for women who are struggling with postpartum depression and or anxiety? Like you said, usually they come two sides of the same coin. What are some ways that they can find support and help?
So one of the things that I really advocate for is, if you can find it in your area, is to find a group that is specifically for postpartum moms. Mothers groups are nice, but if you are feeling depressed and the other moms in that group are not, you are most likely going to feel worse.
Yes.
Although mother groups can be supportive, I'm not bashing them, altogether. But if there's a specific postpartum depression or anxiety type of support group in your area, go there. Go see that you're not alone. Go see that you're not crazy and that other moms are experiencing this, and you guys can be supportive of each other. If there's nothing like that where you can physically go to in your area, there are some really great resources online. Postpartum Support International at postpartum.net. They have access to online support groups, both in English and Spanish. That's a very amazing resource.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that would be number one in terms of getting support. If the thing that you can do just maybe on your own and with the support of family or a partner is is figure out how much sleep you're actually getting. I find so often that women and families, frankly, are frustrated because the mom's symptoms are dragging on and they can't feel better. But when we look very closely at their sleep, it's the reason that they're not getting better more quickly is because their sleep is still so dysregulated and interrupted. And that's par for the course with having a baby, yes. But in terms of if the symptoms you're experiencing related to depression and anxiety are impacting your functioning, if they're getting in the way of you living your life, then you getting sleep is primary. That has to happen first.
Yes.
And negotiating with your partner or family members to come and help out with that temporarily while you get a good, as much as you can, as much as people will help you, but at least 3 to 4 days of some solid sleep up to several weeks to see where your symptoms are really at after sleep.
I think that is such great advice. Such great advice, because you sometimes are so in the sleep deprivation, it's hard to even see or feel clearly.
Yeah.
And then to reassess once you've had a little more sleep will really give you maybe a little bit of a clearer picture.
Yeah. Even for me with my second child, my son, who I was sleep deprived with him and I knew it, and I couldn't figure out how to help him sleep. So I personally consulted as a friend who's a sleep consultant. I said, I know the answers, but I need somebody to tell me what to do because my brain is not working.
Yes, absolutely. 1,000%.
I'm like, give me 1, 2, 3, tell me what to do. I'll follow that because I couldn't reason through stuff. I was so tired. I couldn't make sense of my own thoughts.
You understand why it becomes a form of torture, sleep deprivation. Yeah. So anything else? I mean, you've given such great advice and sort of thoughts so far. Anything else you would tell a pregnant mom or a new mom or a mom trying to get pregnant who worries about postpartum depression and or anxiety? Anything you would tell them, or perhaps somebody that's kind of in it now?
Yeah. For somebody who's concerned about it and worried about it, if you're able to, you have insurance or financially you're able to reach out to a therapist who specializes, so you can either make a plan or kind of check things out to see where you're at beforehand. Certainly having a postpartum recovery plan is really important. Not just how to get the baby out, not just a birth plan, but what to do after. So that could be, and really having as much support as possible. Does that mean having, volunteers bring over meals or friends or family bringing over meals, having that kind of support where you can focus on not all on that list, not on the million things to do, but on recovery and trying to really remember that you're in a period of recovery for a while. It takes a while for your hormones to balance out. You just did a big thing. It takes a lot of hormones to keep pregnancy and keep all of that going. Once the baby comes out, that drops off very quickly. And then if you're nursing and breastfeeding, those hormones jump in. So your body is constantly adjusting to all of this stuff, and allowing yourself space to heal is really important. Allowing yourself space and time to not know what to do is super important. You're not going to know everything to do, and that's normal, and that's okay. So a lot of the stuff that I think we can do, aside from the sleep deprivation and the hormones and then whatever else other stressors you have in your life that's contributing to how you feel, how we talk to ourselves is right up there with how much sleep we get.
Good point.
It is so, if you are catching yourself, I'm not good at this. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Would you say that to your best friend? If they were sitting there crying in front of you? No. Right. How would you talk to somebody you really care about and love? And that's how we can learn to talk to ourselves and give ourselves this kind of period of grace and space to just be learning and be figuring it out.
Yes. And to be patient with ourselves as much as we can. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. This was fantastic. I think it's going to help so many women who are listening in just to feel less alone, and then have some actionable steps they can take if they want to seek out more support.
Right.
And so if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about you and your awesome podcast, how would they do that?
Yeah, the podcast lives at www.momandmind.com. And there are links to listening platforms like iTunes and SoundCloud and stuff like that, or you can listen right there on the webpage. And all of my contacts are there on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And connect with me over there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us today in our honest talk with Dr. Kat. I loved that she opened the door to a topic that can bring about so much shame for women. There are so many shades to emotions and feelings, and I appreciated that Dr. Kat could help us all navigate what many women feel during this emotional time. To get our show notes and more information, go to www.honestmamas.com/episode 9. Also, join our community on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/honestmamascommunity, where these conversations and more will continue.